Oh, this is weird. What's up, everybody? Hammer here, or Hollywood here, or Hollywood Hammer, whatever the hell you want to call me. I wanted to do my first post-PCT gear video for you guys. I'm going to break this up. I usually do one long video and talk about all of my shit. Instead of making an hour-long video, I figured I would split it up. So today we're just going to talk about the big three that I used. And by big three, what I mean is my pack, the tent that I used, or tents, because I used more than one, and my sleep system. So sleep system, I'm going to include my quilt, sleeping pad, and pillow. So it's more than three things, but we'll call it the big three. But first and foremost, a little update for you guys. Since finishing the hike, I'm now back here in Pennsylvania. Didn't really waste any time coming home after finishing. I flew back to PA from Cali maybe 2 days after finishing. I spent maybe 2 weeks here, and then I actually flew back to California and spent like a week and a half there. And some of y'all I know follow me on Instagram, so I'm sure you saw photos and videos from that. You know, spent some time in San Diego, went to Slab City and Salvation Mountain, which was interesting, but definitely a place I always wanted to visit. So that was really cool. I was excited about that. Also, those of you that follow me on social media know that I bit the bullet and I did enroll for barber school. So I will be starting that in about 2 weeks as of today. So I'm excited. It's also quite nerve-wracking. I've applied for some part-time jobs to do on top of the schooling. You know, I'll be in school from 8 to 4, Monday through Friday. So I'm trying to find some work that I can do around those hours. And it has to be, you know, something that pays enough for me to, you know, pay off part of my tuition while I'm in school. So it's kind of a shit show. I haven't gotten it all figured out yet. But yeah, I've just been busy with making those decisions and, you know, looking around for work and things. So that's why I haven't, you know, made any videos or anything for y'all yet. But here we are today. I got a little bit of time. So yeah, let's get right into it and start talking about some of this shit that I used on the PCT in 2024. First and foremost, we have got the pack. This is the Hyperlite Mountain Gear Unbound 55. The color of this thing has definitely changed since the last gear video when I bought this thing. The white isn't very white anymore. And obviously I've got, you know, the Sharpie all over it. I had, you know, written about free haircuts for hikers on the back of it. Overall, this thing worked out really well for me. I love Hyperlite. I plan to still use them in the future. I can still get, you know, some trips out of this bag for sure. I think the main complaint I would have about Hyperlite bags in general would be the shoulder straps. They're fine when you first get these packs, and, you know, for the average hiker or backpacker, it's probably not a big deal, but after a lot of wear, these things just pretty much wear down to nothing. They're super thin. I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's really no padding there anymore. But I guess that's to be expected after, you know, such a long venture. I was a little nervous about using the white Dyneema. For those of you that don't know, Hyperlite makes white packs and black packs. I used one of the black packs on the AT because it's a super thick Dyneema, much thicker than what this is. So, you know, I opted to go for the white this time around, and really it was fine. There's definitely some places where it's kind of worn through, you know, up at the top here from rolling it so often. And one of the main spots is right here, and that's where the clip from my fanny pack rubs constantly. It never made it all the way through the pack. There's actually a stay right here. So even if it did work its way through the Dyneema completely, I don't know that it would have been a huge deal. Didn't go the whole way through, but you can see it definitely rubbed a little bit of that Dyneema away. I never had any problems getting water, you know, into this thing. There wasn't a whole lot of rain on the PCT. I can count on one hand how many times, you know, we were rained on out there, but towards the end, particularly around the Timberline Lodge. We had a really, really bad day of rain, I remember. And, you know, none of my gear got wet. This thing stayed waterproof. I did use a liner, Nylofume pack liner the whole time, so I'm sure that helped as well. But never noticed any water inside this thing, so still waterproof or highly water resistant as far as I'm concerned. I was a little iffy about the removable hip belt in this pack. You know, you can slide this whole hip belt out of this loop here, whatever you want to call it. It's kind of like velcroed in. So I thought that throughout the hike this would shift and sort of be annoying, but it didn't at all. I never messed with it or anything. Didn't have any problems there. Another thing I was really surprised about was how well the bottom pocket held up. You know, you're constantly taking your pack on and off, throwing this thing down, and there's no holes or anything in this pocket, which goes to show, you know, how strong this material is that the pockets are made out of. No tears or anything, which is, I mean, it's just crazy. Because usually, you know, you see people's packs and there's tears all over their pockets. But this is really strong stuff. It doesn't stretch quite as much as I would like it to. You can't really fit a ton in here like you can on like a light AF pack or something like that, but the durability is there. The one thing that this pack does not have that I wish it had was an ice axe loop or ice axe loops. But I took these cheap ones off of one of my old packs and, you know, put it onto this daisy chain here, and it worked just fine. You know, every now and then these would come loose and my ice axe would fall out if I didn't have it, you know, strapped up properly or whatever, but didn't have any issues otherwise. You know, it worked out just fine. And I think you can get these for a couple bucks on websites, maybe even Zpacks or something like that. I took them off my light AF pack. A major improvement with this pack as opposed to the Southwest that I've used in the past is the water bottle pockets. These water bottle pockets are shaped differently than those on some of the other Hyperlites, and they're just in a better spot. So I was always able to just reach around, grab my water bottle, you know, drink, and then put it back. It was much more difficult to do that with the Southwest. So that was a big thing for me. And these things open up so big, you know, I would try to just keep one water bottle in each of them, you know, one with my filter on one side and the one without my filter on the other side. But on those days where I had to carry more water, I could easily fit two 1.5 liter bottles in one side, and then on the other side I would put my my platypus bag, and then I would just kind of tie it up with the straps here to keep it secure. Another thing that they changed with this pack in particular was they made the clips a little lighter, I guess you could say. They're not as strong and beefy as they were on the Southwest, but I didn't have any issues. None of them broke or anything. Actually, now that I'm looking at the hip belt, it reminded me that one of these zippers got kind of screwed up throughout the hike. This one in particular, this was the one that I kept my GoPro in, so I was constantly, you know, taking that in and out, you know, zipping this. But every now and then the zipper kind of skips and it doesn't close properly. You know, I would close it and I would think that it was closed, and a few minutes later I would realize that my GoPro was hanging out because it didn't actually zip closed. So that's the only thing I could say that probably broke on this pack was this zipper. And there are a few little holes in the grid stop material, as you can see. But grid stop isn't really waterproof anyway, so not a huge deal. Sorry, I know I'm kind of all over the place. I didn't really plan on what I was going to say about any of this gear. I'm just kind of winging it. But back to the front here, you have the big pocket, and then you have this small little pocket on the bottom here. This was kind of annoying. I would be fine getting rid of this. I would usually stick my tent stakes and my sunscreen bottles in here. I know that's kind of random, but those were just some items that I thought fit well in here. But throughout the day, things would kind of shift around and everything would kind of end up, you know, underneath the big flap anyway. So like, I understand what they were trying to do here, you know, have a creative way to kind of get to the bottom of this big pouch, you know, by, you know, going in this direction or whatever. But to me, it just didn't really work out as much as I thought it would. I wouldn't mind either getting rid of this completely or just, you know, sewing the bottom of the big pocket down so that these are actually two separate pockets. That would make more sense to me. This feature here to me is kind of useless. You really can't stuff enough crap into this big pocket to make, you know, this feature worth it. But I also didn't use this bottom pocket for a whole lot. Every now and then I would stick my, you know, trash in the trash port, but you know, I didn't really like to do that either. That's what I have my fanny pack for. I like the fanny pack. I'm not going to hike without it. So usually if I had trash or snacks or something, I would just have it in my fanny pack. But the only thing that I ever really put in this bottom pocket was my ground sheet. And it was great for that. I mean, it keeps that dirty ground sheet away from the rest of your gear. And you still keep a nice shape, you know, the bottom of your pack with your ground sheet in there. If you load this full of snacks or anything else really, and then you set it down, you know, your pack falls over and it's kind of goofy. So sometimes I would try putting my mitts, you know, my gloves in here. If I had my wind pants on and I took them off mid-morning, you know, I would stick them in here, but that's about it. Again, it's a cool feature, but I didn't really find a whole lot of use for it. That's really all I have to say, you know, about this thing. If I were going to rate it, you know, 1 out of 10, 10 being the perfect pack, I'd probably rate it at like a, I don't know, 7 maybe, 7 or 8. Is it the perfect pack? No, I don't think the perfect pack exists, but it has a lot of cool features. It held up well, and overall, you know, I think the Hyperlites are pretty comfortable. Some people don't. I've never tried like a ULA. They're supposed to be insanely comfortable, so I can't, you know, compare it to that, but I have had other packs, and you know, this is just as comfortable, if not more comfortable than a lot of them. So if I were to get another Hyperlite down the road, it would certainly be the Unbound, the Southwest, and some of the other ones, like I said, like the water bottle pockets and just other design things or whatever. I just feel they're kind of upgraded on this pack. The 55 liter was perfect for me for the PCT. There were days where we had to do 8, you know, 9-day food carries. So to get all that crap in here was hard, even with the 55 liter. There was no way in hell I could have hiked that trail the way that I did it with my old 40 liter. So I'm happy that I did upsize. And for anyone doing the PCT in the future, I highly recommend a 55 liter. I never really strapped my bear can on top when I had to carry the bear can. It just didn't work out for me. It was super goofy. It made it feel awkward on my back. So what I ended up doing was packing everything in a way to where I could put my bear can inside the pack. I would put the bear can vertically and then just kind of fill in the space around it with all of my other stuff, and that worked fine. And it worked better than having all that weight on top of the pack anyway. That's all I got to say about this thing. Great pack, Hyperlite. I'm going to keep using their products, and I would recommend them for anyone doing a thru hike. Let's talk a little bit about shelters. Those of you that followed along know that I used 2 different shelters on this thru hike. The tent that I started with was the Zpacks Altaplex. This thing had several hundred miles on it when I started the PCT, from the miles that I carried it on the Appalachian Trail, as well as many other, you know, little hikes in between. So I had a feeling that this wasn't going to last the whole thru hike. It lasted me up until Sierra City is when I got the other tent. And that was right around the beginning of July. So, you know, I still got a few months out of this thing. Still got quite a few miles out of it. This thing has served me well, and I probably would have kept using it if the zippers didn't fail me. The zippers kind of started to slip, and that, you know, it would take me 20 tries back and forth to actually get the bug net closed. And at that point in time, we were dealing with a lot of mosquitoes, so it was really frustrating. It got to the point where it was so bad, you know, I could not close the tent at all, and I had to leukotape myself into the tent when I got in it at night to go to sleep. Thankfully, I only had to do that for a couple of days. If I would have had to keep taping myself into my tent each night, that really would have sucked if I had to do that for a long period of time. The Altaplex is a 1-person single wall tent. It is made for the taller folks. I am 6'2", and I fit in this thing. I didn't fit in it great. Usually my foot box was, you know, hitting the inside of the tent. So if we were dealing with a lot of condensation or rain or whatever, my foot box was pretty much always getting wet. Even though these are made for the taller people, you move around when you sleep, and a lot of times your tent's pitched on a little bit of a slope in one direction or another. So with these one-person tents, there's literally just enough room for you and, you know, your sleeping stuff. There's no room for gear, you know, all that, your pack and everything. It all has to stay in the vestibule. And that is why I made the switch to the two-person Zpacks Duplex. The Duplex, I mean, what can I say about it? This is a staple in the ultralight backpacking world. This is probably the most common tent you're going to see on any of these hikes. Like I said, it is a two-person tent. It's a trekking pole tent. It uses both trekking poles to set it up. For one person and their gear, or even better without their gear, this is great. And that's the main reason that I wanted to go with the Duplex. When we were having the mosquitoes really bad, you know, up in Northern California, you would pretty much set your tent up and then you would have to dive in, do all of your chores in the tent, eat in the tent. There was no hanging out outside. It was just unbearable with the bugs. So being in the single person Altaplex, it was very claustrophobic. I didn't really have room to move around at all. That tent was more just for me to crawl into and go to sleep. With the Duplex here, there was a little more room for activities, a little more room for me to cook and just be comfortable and move around. So that was the main reason that I wanted to go with this. Because it's a two-person tent, it is a little heavier, and you know, I'm talking just a couple of ounces. So to have that extra comfort just for a few more ounces, I think it's totally worth it, in my opinion. I got this tent used from a good friend of mine. He sold this thing to me less than half price of what a new one would be. And when I say used, I mean he had used this thing, I think, on like 3 or 4 overnights. The reason that he sold it to me so cheap was because he had his dog with him on one of the overnights, and the dog, I think, ran through the bug mesh or something like that. So there were a bunch of patches in the bug mesh. He sent it back to Zpacks, and they repaired it for him, I believe. So there were a lot of little patches in the mesh. They held up fine. I didn't have any issues in that regard. It just doesn't look as pretty as a newer tent would look. But I don't have a whole lot of negative to say about the Duplex. For a single person, this is probably as close to a perfect tent as you're gonna get. You can always get lighter, but you know, you have to weigh how much comfortability you're willing to sacrifice for, you know, just a few less ounces on your back. At the end of the day, a couple of ounces isn't going to matter a whole lot to you on a thru hike, at least not to me. The Dyneema held up well. It did well in the rain. They're pretty quick and easy to set up, and I'm going to continue to use this thing for as long as it, you know, holds up. Zpacks pretty much says that their tents should last an entire thru hike, and I feel like that probably rings true. The amount of miles that I have on this Altaplex probably equates to a thru hike, if not more than that. So I can't complain too much about the zipper failing. I'm thinking about seeing if I can send it back. Maybe they can repair it. I don't know if that's a thing or not, but I might look into that more. I would certainly still use this tent, especially on weekend, you know, trips where I'm only out there for a couple nights. It was fine for a one-person tent. It's a good tent. I just wanted the extra comfort and the extra space from the two-person tent. All in all, if we're gonna rate these out of 10, the Duplex, I'm gonna give like a 9 out of 10, because like I said, I think this is as close to a perfect tent as it's gonna get for me. It could be a little longer and, you know, fit taller people a little better, and it could probably be a little lighter, but then you're probably sacrificing some of the durability of it. So I don't even want to give them a shittier rating just because of that either. So the Duplex, highly recommend. If I have to buy a new tent in the future, it's going to be another one of these. The Altaplex, I'll give it maybe like a 6 out of 10. It's a little goofy to set up. It's a little bit of an awkward shape. You have to get a really high pitch on these things to allow taller people to sleep in it. So you have to have a trekking pole that can go up to a certain height, or you have to carry a trekking pole jack in order to get the pitch right with these things. So I've always used the same leggy trekking poles that I have, and the reason that I have that particular model is because they can go high enough to pitch this thing. Durability on this guy, I think it's fine. It was just mainly, you know, setting it up, getting the pitch right. It was a little difficult. A lot of times the bathtub floor would stick out more than, you know, the top part of the tent, so when it rained, sometimes it was a little difficult to keep rain out of it. If you're a taller person, it'll work for you. It will hold up for you, and you'll probably be happy with it as long as you know what you're getting into with a one-person tent. Zpacks shelters in general, I'm going to keep rocking with them. Some of their other products I think are questionable, especially for the price points that they have, but the tents, you really can't go wrong with Zpacks. Now, getting into the sleep system, first thing I'll talk about is this quilt. This is the UGQ Bandit quilt. I have since washed this since I've been home. It was pretty raunchy after the hike. Definitely needed a good cleaning. I have a video on my channel on how to wash a down quilt. If you're interested in that, check it out. It's only like 5 minutes long. Washing down gear is kind of tricky, so I wanted to put that video up. Since I've washed it, it's definitely lofted up more. It's starting to smell a little better. But I loved this thing. This was a great quilt. UGQ quilts are comfort rated. So a 20-degree quilt, such as this one, is meant to keep you comfortable at 20 degrees. A lot of the other companies, including Enlightened Equipment and some of the other ones, they're more safety rated, meaning if they say they're rated for 20 degrees, that means that they're going to, you know, keep you pretty much alive at 20 degrees, not necessarily comfortable. If you're looking for comfortability on an Enlightened Equipment quilt, you know, if you want comfort at 20 degrees, you should probably buy a 10-degree quilt or even a 0-degree quilt, whatever. But these are comfort rated. I like that. There's no guesswork, and it did keep me very warm. There weren't many nights where I felt super cold in this thing. That being said, I usually slept in leggings. I usually slept in, a lot of times I slept in my hiking shirt, my sun hoodie. You know, I slept in my Senshi often. On the really cold nights, I slept in my down jacket, whatever. So I did, you know, pair this with warm clothes, but I didn't have any of those freezing nights that I remember with this quilt like I did with my Enlightened Equipment. One of the best parts about these UGQ quilts is that they have an option for what they call, I think it's dynamic tension control or something like that. I'll have to look that up. I think that's what it's called though. But basically there's, down near the foot box, there's these little you know, pulls. And if you tug on these, it kind of, you know, there's a band that runs through the edges of the quilt, right? So as you cinch these down, it kind of shrinks this, and what that does is, you know, if you have your quilt clipped like that and around your neck, you know, your head will be through here. If you pull those strings, it'll kind of tuck the quilt up underneath your back, so it brings it in enough to where it's almost like more of a sleeping bag rather than a quilt. And the reason that that's so nice is because it keeps drafts out of your, you know, from getting in your quilt throughout the night. So if you have that tension control, as they call it, and you strap this down with your quilt strap to your pad, and you also cinch it around your neck, you got a pretty freaking warm setup here. I got no holes in this thing throughout the whole hike, so the durability is definitely there. The main complaint about this thing that I have, and you got to hear me out on this, is going to sound weird at first, is the smell. And what I mean about that is that whatever down that they use is just different than like my Enlightened Equipment. I'm just comparing it to that quilt. Even when I first got this thing, when it was brand new, the first time I took it out and it got damp from condensation or from rain or whatever, it just smelled awful. Like when the down in this thing gets damp, it's a terrible smell. Pair that with the BO and everything else just from through hiking, it just made for a really nasty experience with this thing. So I don't know what kind of specific down they use in here, but I don't remember having that same experience with the Enlightened Equipment quilts. The best way I can describe it is that it just smells like a freaking wet dog. Laundry's done. I'm not going to let that affect my opinion on this thing too much because it is down. I mean, it's feathers from an animal, so it's going to smell like a wet animal when it gets nasty. But yeah, it was just different with this quilt than it has been for other quilts that I've used. So that's the only negative that I have to say about this thing. Other than that, I love it. I want to continue using UGQ quilts. I recommend them to everyone. I feel like it's a company that doesn't get talked about quite as much. People are usually like, what the hell is UGQ? But yeah, I love it. It's definitely a little heavier than my EE quilt, but for the extra warmth, it's definitely worth it. And I feel like there's more ways to customize these quilts than there are some of the other ones, as far as colors and size and downfill and like the tension control, the different features that you can get for these. It's just a lot of different ways that you can make it right for what you need. So UGQ, check them out for sure. All right, next let's talk about this fucking piece of junk. Not really, but I was super frustrated with this thing. This is my sleeping pad that I used. This is the Nemo Longbow sleeping pad. I thought that they stopped making these because they weren't available on the Nemo website for a long period of time, but I just checked the other night and they are indeed still up there. This is a sleeping pad that Nemo geared more towards anglers and hunters. And the main draw for me was that this had a higher R value than some of the other Nemos that were available at the time. There's the Tensor Alpine insulated sleeping pad that Nemo does, and that has a high R value, but you couldn't find those anywhere when I needed to buy a pad, so this is what I opted for. The other main thing that they advertise about this particular pad is the rip stop bottom, and I'm here to tell you that it is not stopping any fucking rips. I just counted again, there are 6 patches in the bottom of this thing. In the ripstop bottom, 6 patches. And a lot of those patches I had to patch multiple times. I just had a lot of trouble with this thing. It was so frustrating. Patching a pad while you're out on a thru hike is probably the most annoying thing ever. So to do it so many times on a pad that's supposed to be, supposed to have a ripstop bottom is just ridiculous in my opinion. And I never put this thing on the ground. I was never cowboy camping without a ground sheet. It was always on a ground sheet or on my, Dyneema bathtub floor. So to wear so many holes in this thing is just crazy. And with the Nemos, because of these little, I don't know what you call them, I guess the baffles, the little dimples that are all throughout the bottom, it makes it harder to patch these. I had issues with thermarests in the past, that's why I switched. Little did I know that this would be a lot worse for me. I'm definitely going back to thermarests, by the way. But yeah, these dimples, it always seemed like the holes that I got were always near these dimples, and because of the odd shape, it made it harder to patch. All that being said, it was comfortable and it did keep me warm, which is the main reason that I got it. But the durability just isn't there for me. Like I said, in the future I will be switching back to thermarest. I pretty much only kept this thing for this video, otherwise I probably would have thrown it out already. But I'm getting more and more broke by the day, so I'm gonna keep hanging on to it for a little more in case I want to do like a weekend trip or something. I know people that use Nemos and they do fine. They don't have the same issues that I had, but that's my experience and that's what I'm going to go off of. This is the large wide version. It was plenty big enough for me, no complaints in that regard. sometimes it actually felt a little too big. I could have gotten away with a smaller one, and it probably would have helped, you know, fit in that one-person tent a little better. The Nemo pump sack that these come with, you know, that pops onto here, I did carry that throughout the hike, and that thing actually ripped in half toward the end of the hike there. So I was either borrowing someone else's or blowing it up by mouth, you know, toward the end of the through hike, which was annoying as well. Last thing I'll say is we went to trail days, obviously, and sure enough, when I got to trail days, I had another hole in the bottom of this thing. So I said, you know what, instead of dicking around with this thing throughout the entirety of trail days, I'm going to take it to the Nemo tent and see if they'll repair it for me. Sure enough, they did. They patched it up, and I'm thankful for that because I didn't have to worry about it. But then I had friends who had issues with their Thermarest sleeping pads, so they did the same thing, took their pads to the Thermarest tent, and instead of getting another patch put in their pad, Thermarest was just giving out free ones for people that were having issues, which I thought was super cool. Not that I'm looking for free gear or whatever, but I figure it's worth mentioning that it just seems like maybe the customer service might be a little better on Thermarest's end as well. Anyway, it worked. I made it through the whole hike with this thing, just barely. It kept me warm, it was comfortable. I just wish it held up a little better. The last thing I want to talk about really quick here, that would be my Nemo Philo Elite pillow. Second through hike with this thing. I had it for the entire AT, had it for the entire PCT and many hikes in between. Still going strong, no holes in it. The valve is still working properly. It's comfortable. The fact that you can pop this cover off, you know, take the balloon part of it out of this cover and, you know, wash it if you want to. That's nice as well. Not that I ever washed it on the through hike. I have washed it since I've been home, but it's nice to be able to do that. And again, the main thing about these pillows is it's just less balloony than a lot of the other inflatable pillows. Again, it's a little heavier than some of those other options, but for the comfort, I think it's worth it. I don't know, the camp pillow thing overall is becoming less and less appealing to me. Sometimes I feel like it's just another thing. I feel like a lot of times my head just leaves this thing in the middle of the night anyway. So I could probably get away with just using my clothes bag or something as my pillow instead. I may, you know, I used to do that in the past, so I may switch back to that. I don't know that I would do a long through hike without a pillow though. It's nice being able to get a little better sleep whenever you can. But for weekend trips and stuff, I don't know that this is really necessary for me anyway. But it's a good pillow, highly recommend. And I guess I have to give it a 10 out of 10 because I don't have any complaints with it. As far as rating the Nemo sleeping pad, I mean, y'all can pretty much assume where I would put that on the rating scale, so I won't even bother. Anyway, that is my big 3 for the PCT in 2024. I hope that it was a little informative for you. If you have any questions about any of this shit, please leave them in the comments and I will respond. I do read all my comments, y'all know that. I'm going to try to keep getting through some of these gear videos. Obviously my life's a little busy right now. I'm still trying to kind of get my shit together, so I'm not just sitting around, you know, with a bunch of extra time making videos. I will get them out there at some point. I haven't really started working on the big movie either. That's going to be a whole other project. When I had the AT video, I think I only had one full SIM card, one 256 gig SIM card that I made that movie out of. For the PCT video, I have 6 full SIM cards. So it's a lot more footage to go through. It's going to take me a lot more time. It's just a very big project that I haven't even dove into yet. So be patient in that regard. I have no idea when I'll get to putting that out, but it'll be coming eventually. I hope you all are well. I appreciate you watching. I appreciate your patience with putting out some of these videos. Some of y'all have actually messaged me like, where the hell are you at? It's like, yeah, I'm getting there, you know. I'm trying. Until next time, peace out, party people. Y'all have a good one.